Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our service this morning from Kilworth United Church. As you can see, we are sending our service out remotely today because we are all staying home as much as possible and trying to really limit our contacts. We want to be able to greet you in person again as soon as possible. So all of our staff and our lay leaders are doing everything they can to make sure that everybody stays safe. And we certainly hope that you are staying safe, getting your vaccinations, and looking after your families in this time that is, for all of us, disappointing and troubling. But we will get through this together. And the main thing right now is that we all work together and we all think about one another each time we take any of the actions that we take. I want to thank our lay leaders for all of the work that they do in bringing this service to you each Sunday. Let us pray together. Gracious God, on this cold winter morning, we come seeking the warmth of your fellowship, seeking the warmth of our congregation, and even though we are not together in person, we are together in spirit. Before we know that you are with us in all that we do and in everything that we do. And so we ask you now, God, to be with us as we take some time this morning, or perhaps this evening, to stop and to breathe and to ponder and to think about what it is to be a faithful disciple of Jesus Christ in this time and in this place. For you have called us, each one of us, to be here, to be now, and to be your people. May these moments ahead and all of today remind us that we are part of a bigger world, a world in which all of us have a place and all of us are important, for we have been created in your image. Amen. This week, as I was going through my week, and probably like you, I spend a little bit, well, maybe a little bit too much time scrolling through the internet and through Facebook and so forth. And I saw something that really made me laugh. And it said, if you want to have a great day, there's two things that you need to do. One, don't read the news. And two, don't step on a scale. And I think we can all resonate with one or other, or perhaps both of those admonitions right now. That it seems that we never really get out of this, do we? We've worked hard, we've gotten our vaccinations, we've restricted our activities and put off family plans and trips that perhaps that we had looked forward to for a long time. And in some ways, it feels like we're right back at the beginning of this. And yet we're not at the beginning, because we have come this far, and most of us have been able to remain well throughout this time. And here we are, we're still here. And sometimes when we're moving through something, particularly something difficult, it can feel like we're taking one step forward and two steps back, two steps forward and three steps back. And yet, with each step, we are moving through whatever it is that has befallen us. And as I thought about the current situation of the world right now and where we're at in this COVID pandemic, it reminded me very much of people that are diagnosed with an illness that is a chronic illness. And so often, if I can just for a moment make some comparisons, is that an illness comes on very suddenly often and can throw a person, sort of really throw them off balance, not knowing, how do I deal with this? What's going to be the outcome? What does this mean in the long term? What about my family? What about my work? How is this going to affect my life in the long term? And we so often think with illness or surgery or any of these things that, okay, we've got this, it's going to get better, we're going to return to the person we were. But if you talk to anybody who lives with any kind of a chronic illness, you will know that it's never really over. That we learn, and I live with chronic illness as well, that we learn, get past that initial stage of shock and grief and wanting things to be the way they were and working hard so that we can get back to where things were and how they were. And then at some point we realize that that isn't going to happen, that we are changed and that things are never going to be what they were earlier. And at that point we learn, and I'm speaking of dealing with chronic illness, and at that point we learn how to manage this situation. And we're confronted with what are the things that we're going to have to give up. For me, one of the things that I had to give up was my skis and backcountry canoe trips. And those may not be anything that you're interested in, but I can tell you, for me, those were real losses. And it took me a while to get past, realizing I kept thinking, well, maybe if I just do this, or maybe if I just do this, I'll be able to get back to doing those things. And then finally had to come to the realization that it wasn't going to happen. And so there's real grief with that, and grief in realizing that something that has been important and that has been a big part of my life isn't going to happen. And so oftentimes when we get to that point of grief, so often the advice of our friends and colleagues might be to point out all of the good things, to say, well, you know, it's not really that bad. You can do this or you can do that. And I've discovered in my lifetime that often people don't know what to say. They're trying to make us feel better. They're trying to make us maybe see the other side of a situation. which is always very good. And but we're at that point of lament where we're saying, this isn't fair. I've had to give up things that are really important to me. When I went on backcountry canoe trips, it wasn't so much that I loved the portaging. In fact, I really disliked that part of it. But it was being out in nature. It was a big part of my own spiritual nurture. And that was a way that I often would refill my own spiritual resources. And so then having to find ways, excuse me, and then having to find ways that I could fill my spiritual resources other than that particular way. And that all takes time. And it takes time. We have to get to that point of being willing to lament, being willing to honestly say, you know what, this stinks. I really don't like this. I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm disappointed. And I think that that's much like living with this pandemic. I think when it first started almost 2 years ago, most of us thought, okay, we're going to have to stay home for a few weeks, but this is going to be over. We're going to get back to our usual routines. There's not really going to be any major changes. We have good scientists. We have good medical personnel in Canada, and they will carry us through this. And then as things moved on in the early pandemic, we were holding out for a vaccine, that when the vaccine came, almost like the people that were waiting for the Messiah, this was going to change everything. This was going to lift us out of this pandemic in the same way that the people in first century Palestine felt, hey, the Messiah is coming. He's going to release us from these miserable occupiers that we have in the Romans, and life is going to be what we thought it was. And then Jesus came as a baby. And there was kind of this gasp, this, you've got to be kidding. You mean, God, this is it? And I think we had a similar response when the vaccine came out. We were, I think, surprised. Some of us were surprised that, wow, this is great. Within less than a year, our scientists have been able to find this vaccine. They must have been working around the clock. Truth is, they've been working around the clock on coronavirus for years. And so surely we would be back to normal. And people were a year ago, people were lining up for vaccinations. And here we are a year later, and we're still dealing with the same things. And all of our reopening plans got slammed shut just before Christmas. And we're sort of left saying, huh? We've taken all these steps forward, and now we're taking steps back. Sort of like the person that that deals with a chronic illness, that changes their diet, changes their exercise pattern, changes their whole routine, changes their work schedule, lowers the stress in their life, whatever it is that they need to do to manage that chronic illness. And then they discover, even with all of this, I am not going back to the person I was. And so that realization that just bang, hits us in the face. And so just like the person living with chronic illness, we're at a point when we have to lament. We have to honestly say, you know what? This stinks. I don't like this. I'm tired of having to shelf all my plans. I haven't seen my family for 2 or 3 or whatever years. If you have family living overseas, you probably haven't seen them for at least 2 years. And sometimes we think, especially people that ascribe to the Christian faith, when they have strong feelings about feeling disappointed or feeling angry or any of those really strong feelings, they sometimes think, people will say to me, oh, Kathy, I really shouldn't feel this way. And I always say to people, our feelings are a gift from God, as well as our life and everything else in our life. And we can't stop having feelings. Our feelings are ways that we understand the world. And so we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge the disappointments of missing graduations of our children, or perhaps ourselves, missing graduations, missing out on, say, a trip that you've planned for a long time, reunions, anniversaries, weddings, young people trying to plan weddings, funerals. Over the last 2 years, all of our rites of passage around the end of life have been turned upside down and backwards. And I've worked with so many people that have had to face this situation in ways that are different than what they usually have. And there's the grief of losing that person or that dream or that pet or whatever, and then not being able to recognize that in ways that are familiar to us, in ways that we know bring us comfort. Attending a funeral, having a lunch afterwards, and being able to talk to friends and share memories. Those things we haven't been able to do. And so part of right now, when people talk about being very stressed and their patience being short, part of it, I think, is just acknowledging that we're fed up with this. We're tired of it. We're tired of being disappointed. And it's not, people say, well, what good is that going to do? It's not going to change anything. It is what it is. That's become the saying, hasn't it? It is what it is. And it is what it is. But when we truly acknowledge to ourselves and to our God what we are feeling, then we are able to let go of some of that. We are able to let go of it. Jesus also left us that example. When he was on the cross and in his final hours, he cried out to God in lament, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was angry. He was hurt. He was feeling such deep pain, psychically, physically, and crying out to God, why have you forsaken me, God? And then he was able to let that go and rest in God's hands. And so I think that we too have to cry out to God once in a while and just say, it doesn't matter what we're feeling. If we're feeling it, then express it and let God have it, because God can handle the things that we can't. I mentioned earlier that I live with chronic illness, as well as many others that I've worked with. And I can tell you, I can assure you, that there have been many times, and there still are, when I run up against the edges of some of my illness. I've learned how to manage it pretty well. But there are times when I run up against the edges of it, or I'm triggered, and I cry out to God as well. And I sometimes get caught again in saying, this really stinks. I don't like this. I didn't deserve this. And then as I pour that out to our Maker and our Creator, then I'm able to let that go. And when we let something go, then we're able to receive. And when I'm able to let those things go, then I'm able to receive the goodness that is around us right now, and able to live in the moment, which is really what we can do, and what all of us can do right now, is simply to live completely in this moment, to live in a state of mindfulness, so that we don't miss a single moment. I took the dog out last night, and it was cold. It was very cold. But even in that, I kept reminding myself, this is a moment like no others. So take it in, drink it in, feel it, experience it, because it's not going to come again. And then at the end of the day, we can say, I did my best. I did my best. And that's all any of us can do. And so I encourage you this week to simply do the best that you can. Keep on keeping on. And know that God is already there with you. Know that we are not facing these things alone, that we really have someone with us on the journey. I want to finish this sermon today with, I want to draw this together with a song that we often sing from More Voices. It's found at 96. And I think that I try to hum this sometimes at home and make it kind of a mantra, because it is so true. And when you call for me, I have already answered. And when you call for me, I am already there. So if you have a copy of Voices United, I switch the verses around. And when you call for me, I have already answered. And when you call for me, I am already there. So remember, when we call for God, God's already answered. God's already there. So my friends, this week, be safe, stay warm, and keep the faith. God bless you. Amen. Would you please join me in a moment of prayer? And I invite you, as I'm saying this prayer, to hold up before God people and places, situations that you are aware of. I try to name people that I'm aware of from our congregation and situations that are in need of prayer. But invariably, there are other prayer concerns that need to be held up. And as long as one or two of us are holding up those prayers in a time when we're all together, God hears them. Please join me in prayer. God, we thank you for this beautiful winter day. We thank you that we live in a part of the world where we are able to experience the changing seasons, because it reminds us that the seasons of our life change, and that in each season there is unique beauty, and in each season there are also limitations that some people feel and others don't. And so by fully living into each one of the seasons of the year, we're able to, if we choose to, expand our understanding of your world and your people, so that we might always welcome all of our brothers and sisters, the strangers you send among us. Welcome them as your children, for indeed we are all your people, your children, and you care for each and every one of us. There are some, oh God, who are particularly hurting and who really need you to hold them in the palm of your hands. We name a few of those, and we know that there are many more that you know. We ask you especially, oh God, to hold in your hands Nikki and Brenda as they continue their journey together and as they seek respite and rest. We ask you, God, to particularly wrap your arms and your love around Bill and his parents as he seeks answers and wholeness and wellness. And as they reach out and care for one another as a family, that they might know that truly you are in their midst. We ask you, God, to put your arms around Judy and hold her tight. We ask you, O God, to bring healing to Eric and to Michael. We ask you, God, to, especially at this time, to touch those who are grieving. For there are so many who have experienced losses. Many have lost a loved one, and they are navigating life without that special person or partner. Many have lost an opportunity or a dream, lost their way in life, and wondering how they go forward. Many have lost a business or a vocation, a life's work, and standing in the face of that and wondering, what was this all about? And what do I do now? Bring calm and comfort to all of these people, O God, that they might be able to, at least for a short period, stop and breathe and know that you are there. We ask you, O God, to be with all of our first responders, our medical people who are stretched to the limit and beyond. We ask you, O God, to be with our children who want to be back into school, and our teachers who are longing to teach them in school. And we ask you, O God, to be with our politicians who are making decisions. And we ask that our politicians and our medical people and our scientists, our business people, our first responders, and our faith leaders might all work together so that we might live in a place and a time that is whole and rich and full of opportunities for everyone. For everyone matters. We think of people beyond our own doors and shores. We think especially of the people of Haiti who are living in a state of chaos, the people of Kazakhstan who risk the same kind of chaos, and the people of Myanmar who are also living amid chaos and violence. And God, we ask you to be with each one of us. For sometimes we are hurting deeply. Sometimes it's hard even to see what the next step is. And when we have trouble seeing the next step, or wondering what the next part of the journey is, we ask that you keep us focused on Jesus and keep us focused on the ways that he lived his life by reaching out to others and by teaching us to pray, saying, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, have a good week. Reach out to one another. And in reaching out, we also reach in and nourish our own spirits and our own souls. Have a good week. I'll meet you again on this platform next Sunday. Bye for now.